I'm Ken Kelly, and I've got a real burning passion for counselling skills. I've built training that takes the doubt out of using counselling skills. You get to see the counselling skills used in real live sessions by a qualified therapist. Full sessions, real material, real counselling skills. To find out more, go to counsellingskillsacademy.com.
Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hi, I'm Rory. Bit of a wave there for the people watching on the YouTube video. And with me, as always, is Ken. How are you doing, Ken?
I'm exceptionally well. Thank you for asking, Rory. We are so grateful that you have joined us for episode 233 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. This is the last episode in this season. We run the Counselling Tutor Podcast during the academic year here in the United Kingdom, and many students graduating at the moment. So last episode for this season, but of course we will be picking up again. We hope you'll stay with us. But what can you expect today? Well, we start episode 233 by looking at those counselling foundations, where today we're going to have a phenomenological look at phenomenology. You see, there it is. There's the tongue twister to start the episode off. We then move on to focus on self, where we recognize you are the beating heart of your practice. We're going to be speaking about new beginnings in that section. And then we go into practice matters, where we're deep diving into a counseling skill. It is the counseling skill of focusing. It is a recent meetup that Rory had interviewing Sally Ann Armitage, who loves skills and speaks with great passion about the skill of focusing. But kicking us off today, phenomenology, Rory.
Yes, yeah. I'm almost tempted to go phenomenon, boo, 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 because it's an interesting philosophy, and it is the philosophy of experience. So this is quite crucial, isn't it, to counselling, that we have that we work with our clients' experience, and phenomenology is a philosophy based around how we experience. And it can trace its roots back really to the 1800s, and a couple of very, very influential philosophers, Edmund Husserl being one of them, and Martin Heidegger, who both talked about Dasein, which is German for being in the world. Isn't that a lovely term, Dasein? Being in the world, existing in the world. And that, of course, forms the basis of lots of counselling approaches. And I say lots because a lot of people attribute phenomenology to person-centred therapy, and almost certainly Carl Rogers built his theory around the perception. 19 propositions, of course, was a phenomenological approach to exploring the client's lived experience. However, there's other therapies draw strongly on phenomenology. Transactional analysis, in its modern form, draws on it. And in fact, newer, more informed models of CBT draw on clients' experience. It's one that's really worth exploring, I think, if you're a practitioner, because it's such a rich seam of philosophy and speaks to the heart, I think, of the human condition, Ken.
I like it. So phenomenology, it took me a while to get my head around it. When I first heard about phenomenology when I was studying, didn't quite get it. And I even read the textbooks, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And over the years, my phenomenological experiences have kind of made me go, okay, I get it now. And phenomenology, if you're kind of struggling with the base meaning of it, it is how we interpret the world, our place within the world, and what is happening around us. And it is individual to ourselves. And an example of that is if we live in the north of Wales, and we live in a little cottage, and all around us are these massive rolling green fields, and I look out with a big smile on my face and I go, this is the place to be. I've worked hard and for many years to get to where I am now, and I'm so happy. Then I look to my daughter, who's 18. She's looking at the same fields, she's living in the same house, she's having the same experiences as I'm having. And if I ask her how it is for her, she goes, it's really boring. I want to have nightlife, and so it's really interesting. Two people can be in the same position, having kind of the same experiences, but view it very differently. So it's an idiosyncratic way of how we see the world and how we interact with the world. It's phenomenological, and each phenomenological view is unique. So your view of the world is unique to you. It's 100% unique to you. How you see the world, how you feel the world, how you interact with the world, how the memories and your past and all of that kind of manifest in who you are today. It's phenomenological. Have I understood that correctly, Rory?
You have, Ken. That's a beautiful rendition of phenomenology. And, our experience is sometimes referred to as the phenomenological field, our field of vision and experience. And I too was out and about the other day, and I was out with my 2-year-old granddaughter, Izzy, and she found a daisy. And to her, it was the entire world. She might have found gold bullion or some lost treasure, but this was absolutely everything. Her phenomenological experience was that this was just the greatest thing she's ever discovered. And as those of us who've had children or been around children know, that happens because it's a first, and she was holding this daisy up and telling me about this daisy. And what was really interesting was that I had to work really hard to enter her frame of reference, because to me, it was one of many daisies that were along the side of the canal. But once I did, the joy that we shared together was phenomenal. Did I really say that? Phenomenal. And I think it speaks to meeting our clients, doesn't it? Clients can talk about things, and sometimes I've heard student supervisees say, well, there's not a lot of material. The material's a bit thin. And I say, meet it. Meet what they're saying. Meet the understanding, the essence of what they're saying, and it will be a lot less thin. It will be meaningful. It's because you're coming from your frame of reference. If you could get into the client's frame of reference, it will be as meaningful or nearly as meaningful for you as it is for them. But you have to work at it. You have to give yourself to that frame of reference, like I did with Isabella and the daisy.
Yeah, you entered that phenomenological place from which she was seeing that miracle, which it is. To see a daisy for the first time through those fresh eyes as she was experiencing is just incredible. And I guess we become jaded over the years. How many daisies might you have seen, Rory? Maybe you started at one stage picking a daisy up, maybe before you have memories you can kind of recall, and you looked at a daisy that way because that's where you were phenomenologically at that stage. That's where your granddaughter finds herself at the moment. And it's our ability to put aside who we are, the road we've traveled, in order to be there with our clients. And I loved how you used frame of reference. Specifically, when we're looking at person-centered theory, we're required to enter the frame of reference of that client that's in front of us. And if your supervisee is coming to you and saying, as you said, Rory, the material's a little thin, that is their very own unique phenomenological view of the material that has been given. Something that is tiny and small for one person is massive and life-changing for another because of how we perceive the world. And each one of us is so unique. And it's interesting, we have 5 senses that we use to interact with the world. We can touch things, we can smell things, we can hear what's going on, we can see what's going on. And this is, of course, if all of those are I guess, active within us. And I recognize that for some, they're not there, and you may have less senses, but generally there are 5 senses in which and that's all we have to interact with the world. I'm a bit of a Trekkie fan, and we speak about Star Trek from time to time here on the Counselling Tutor Podcast. And in Star Trek, when they get to a new location, they pull out what's called a tricorder. And a tricorder is a device with sensors on it, and they turn it on and it tells them what's around them. And I guess we have our own tricorders as humans, which will be our vision, our hearing, our taste, our touch, and our smell. And that is how we interact with the world. Everything we are, every memory we have is created from those senses. It comes in via those senses, and those are the only senses we have. Of course, we can talk about the sixth sense, we can talk about our emotions as being something separate to that. But I guess the picture I'm trying to paint here is that is the phenomenological field that is around us, or how we interact with it. It is our personal way of interacting. And of course, when we look at the light spectrum, we see a tiny sliver, a tiny sliver of that is the visual light spectrum, because that's what our sensor, that is our eyes, can detect. But of course, there is infrared and below, and there is ultra, above violet, ultraviolet and above, into radio waves that we are not able to see, that we are not able to perceive, that we are not able to sense, but of course they are still there. So I guess what the world is and how we experience and what we can sense and our part in the world may be very different and unique to each individual. Hope I haven't gone too far off the old Star Trek-y.
Well, we've done tricorders, haven't we, Ken? And daisies. You're absolutely right. It's how we become a human tricorder, how we engage with the world. But the interesting question, and the question that kind of hangs with this, is our experience authoritative? In other words, is our experience actually what we believe it to be? And Carl Rogers had an interesting take on this. He said, my experience is not authoritative because it's infallible. It's the basis of authority because it can always be checked in new and primary ways. In this way, it is frequent. It is frequently error or fallibility that's open to correction. And here we have really the kind of rich material that therapy is made out of, where a client may say something that they believe to be true, but actually a gentle challenge may actually alter the way they view the world. And there is a bit of a debate in therapeutic circles. Should we allow clients to just have their authoritative view on the world and actually work with it? Or should we give them an opposite view to help them see something? So if you have a client that says, I'm stupid, do we allow them to just sit with that idea that they're stupid? Or do we help them see what we can see in them and help them develop that edge of awareness? And I think that's the tension that lies within therapy. It's a tension between the client's authoritative view of the world and actually that edge of awareness that is just, we can just about see it, but it's still not clear to us. And that's where therapy helps. It expands that edge of awareness and brings new possibilities.
I love that, Rory. That is a really good example as well, using the client coming in with such a presentation. And I guess, as always, Rory and I are not here to tell you what you should do. We're not making any suggestions. I notice Rory didn't say what you should do in that situation. He just says that there is a debate or an argument or two sides to that. It's for you to decide. It's your practice, and you're going to be working to your modality. We're two peers that come together and we have the discussions. I like that. Where do you go with that? And I'm not asking you, Rory. I'm just kind of asking myself with what you've given there. I can spend a good few hours just on that scenario. So a client comes in and says, I feel I'm so stupid. Do you contradict their frame of reference and kind of go in there, and by whatever means you do it, you're basically saying, no, that's not what I see. Never mind what you see and what you feel. Let me tell you what I see here. I don't see a stupid person. Or do you share what you see from your frame of reference in order for them to maybe challenge maybe an irrational belief they have in themselves? Oh, Hey, that's good stuff to take into supervision when you find that coming up in your practice.
Oh, that's definitely meat and potatoes, or a vegan alternative. No lettuce, please.
Oh yes. They'll be flowing in, Rory. I wanted to just kind of add in when you were talking about that the client coming in. What can also happen is you can find a client that comes in, they're in a certain place, so their frame of reference is A. They can go away, and 2 weeks later, their frame of reference can be B. And I'll give you an example of that. Had a big fight with my partner, and they are this and that and the next thing, and I don't want to carry on with this, and that's it now, and I've got to get away out of this relationship. And 2 weeks later, the presents and the gifts and the sorries and everything is now. And sometimes we're asked to be there in that frame of reference, and kind of understanding that the phenomenological way in which we experience the world can change from moment to moment. It's like the weather. The sky is always there, but sometimes the clouds come in and they will obscure. So the person is still the same person, but they may present in different ways depending on what is happening to them phenomenologically.
Absolutely, Ken. And it may be that someone has been told they are a certain way, and their phenomenological view of the world is fixed to that. Introjected values and conditions of worth we talk about in person-centered therapy. Injunctions we may talk about in transactional analysis. If it's CBT, we may talk about irrational thinking or automatic negative thoughts. And I remember many years ago sitting with a young client when I was a child therapist who had a very, and I've done this quite a few times, who had a very kind of down view of herself. So I said, write 3 things about yourself on this piece of paper you believe to be true. And she wrote them down. I said, I'm going to write 3 things that I observe about you that I believe to be true. Of course, they were the total opposite. And what was really interesting was that she says, well, you're seeing this. And I said, well, that's what I see. I said, I'm not saying it because I want to be kind or nice to you. This is me telling you my truth. My I didn't use the word phenomenological, but how I perceive you, which is kind of the same thing. And it had such a positive impact because it gave her a different view of who she was from someone who had no skin in the game. So I was just her therapist. I mean, I was just a hired help, really. And it made such a difference. So holding that tension between the client's perceived view of themselves and how you view the client. And I think this is crucial, not your views, not your wider views, but how you view the client are 2 very, very different things. And I think it's really, really useful to have somebody give you feedback and say, well, certainly the feedback I've received through the years as someone who left school with no qualifications and feeling rather dim because of my dyslexia, mainly because I was told that on a daily basis. My tertiary education was just being told how thick I was, to be honest. And to be told by someone else that actually, no, you don't fit into the mainstream, but actually you've got smarts in different directions and you should build on those. Big life-changing observation. And here we are.
And there's the key, isn't it? Big life-changing observation. When our phenomenological view changes, it can have massive impact, positively and negatively. So it is an important theory, and Rory has created a super duper handout. This handout's going to be really, really useful if you are studying person-centered theory, or if you practice person-centered theory, because it's phenomenology in the person-centered counseling. It's going to give you a little bit of the history in there, explain what phenomenology is and how it influenced Carl Rogers' thinking. So that is a must-have download. It also has links to how phenomenology, wow, this word, Rory, links to the person-centered theory, and it's got some brilliant references in there as well. So if you want to grab Rory's super duper handout, you can find that by going to counsellingtutor.com. That is our website. Top of the website page, you'll find our podcast tab. Click on that, go to episode 233. The handout is right there for you in the page. So there it is, those important foundations that we lay. And then the focus on self today, we're looking at the new beginnings, Rory.
Yes, well, at the time we're making this podcast, which is in the June of 2022, we're coming to the end of academic years. And also, a lot of people may be thinking about moving jobs or changing careers or generally having a bit of a kind of audit of their lives. And I think rightly we put a focus on endings and what endings mean. But I've always been fascinated by new beginnings. Maybe it's just the kind of person I am. I'm sure it is. But I don't put as much emphasis on endings personally as I do on what's next. Where are we going to go? And, as someone who grew up with, the NASA space program and saw men walk on the moon when I was 11, that was quite a thing. That's quite a thing. NASA didn't say, oh, well, we've had the Mercury program, we put a person into space, but, we've ended that. Let's all sit around and talk about that. And he said, no, what's next? What's next? And I think it's a good discipline to harness in self, to engage in the future, to step into the future and say, what is this new beginning going to look like? What does it mean to me? What will I contribute to this new beginning? And just embrace it, because we do move. We are, as human beings, we are propelled towards the future. We always look towards the future. So, yeah, that's my view on it, Ken. I have to be honest, I'm not a big endings person. Obviously celebrate endings in practice, but in my own personal life, when something finishes, I kind of have a reflection on it, and then I'm thinking, what's next? What about you, Ken?
I think that you need a chapter to end to start a new chapter. That's the excitement of a book. If a chapter just goes on and on and on and on, it eventually loses interest, certainly for me. So we're facing endings all the time, and we've covered endings multiple times on the podcast, and there's loads of information on endings, working with endings in therapy on the counsellingtutor.com website. But I think that you've chosen a really interesting view on this, because with every ending there is a new beginning. The same is true with our clients. If they come to the end of their sessions with us, they're moving on. What does that look like? How do you work with them around the new beginning that they may be going into? And I don't mean as in everything's going to change, but you're ending your session, so there is a change there. Change brings about new beginnings. And I think that, looking in our Facebook group at the moment, and we've got tens of thousands of people in there. If you're not part of our Facebook, go and join. Go on Facebook, type in Counselling Tutor. We'll let you in and come and join in the discussion. But there's a lot of discussion in the group at the moment from students who are either coming to the end of a year of study and might be picking up with more studies next year. And you can see the conversations are, what can I expect as I go into level 4? I've just finished my level 3. So that they're acknowledging the ending, but they're also acknowledging, what can I expect going forward? We're naturally curious about those new beginnings. And of course, there are others that are saying, I'm coming to the end of my studies. That's it now. I'm putting the studies behind me. What does that future look like? Will I go into private practice? Will I go and work in an agency? And I think that is a time of excitement. And I like how you've taken what is an ending, because it's the end, I guess, of this season of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. And we're going to be quiet for a few weeks until we pick up again in September of 2022, if you're listening in real time. And that will be in itself a new beginning. It'll be a new beginning for the podcast, and the format will change. We change the format every academic year, and we can go, oh, this is sad. We can look back on what we did this year and talk about that with nostalgia, or we can look forward and go, oh, what's it going to look like when we start again? And I think that's a really nice way of looking at an ending in terms of viewing it through the frame of a new beginning, Rory.
Absolutely. And to embrace it and go into the future, and to paraphrase your Star Trek, to boldly go where no one has gone before. And I think that's really exciting. I remember in my final year, when I came to graduation, we all went out for something to eat. I had a Coca-Cola because I couldn't afford a meal because I was a bit poor at that time. And I sat on the wall at a place near the college and near where I live called Wernthlow, which is very high. And I remember sitting on the wall with my Coca-Cola as everyone else was inside eating and thinking to myself, this is it. This is it. And I was really on one of the highest places in Manchester, looking into the future. And I thought, this is it. And I went off into the future. I didn't spend too much time thinking about the past or the fact I wasn't going to college. I spent the time thinking, what will my future going to look like after committing 3 years of my time and eating beans on toast twice a week for 2 years and I've always had that view of the world. What's next? And one of the things they teach you in teacher training is when a child or a student has finished any work, you say, that's really good. What's next? And I think it's a very, very healthy way of living life. It's healthy for me, and it's certainly proved very enlightening. That's all I'll say. What's next has been very enlightening, Ken.
It is. And we started this episode by speaking about phenomenology and how we all experience life differently and interact with life differently. And new beginnings can be exciting, but they can also be scary. The new beginnings can bring with them an unknown element. I was just speaking about what was going on in the Facebook group of what might it look like next year when I study? What might it look like as I go out into private practice? And maybe there's an energy you feel in your tummy or in your chest when you think about that, and the butterflies come up, and there's maybe uncertainty about what that new beginning looks like. Or maybe there's excitement, meeting a new friend or a new partner can be an exciting new beginning. So new beginnings, I guess, come in many different flavors, and it depends on what it is and what it looks like and your relationship with it. It's phenomenological, trying to keep the theme there, Rory. You're keeping the Star Trek in. I'll keep on saying phenomenology badly and stuttering over it.
Yeah, well, that's you're absolutely right, Ken, and you're absolutely right. Our Facebook group, and if Ken's mentioned our Facebook group, if you don't know about our Facebook group, if you go to Facebook, type in Counselling Tutor into the Facebook feed, and you'll find our group. We're a closed group, but our moderation team will let you in. And there's thousands and thousands of like-minded people, tutors, there's students, there's qualified colleagues, there's supervisors. It's a real eclectic mix of people all talking about the world of counselling and psychotherapy. And the overall theme as of June 2022 is new beginnings. People are talking about what the world will look like. And I think embracing that, and to quote a lyric from a Liam Gallagher song, step out of the darkness unafraid, step out of the darkness into the light, grasp your light, because you only get one go at it, depending on your belief system, but certainly corporeally you only get one go at it. So I would say embrace new beginnings, because they are the future. That's it.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this in real time and you are a student and you've come to the end of your year of studies, congratulations to you. If you finished all of your studies and you're about to go out into practice, a big congratulations. We celebrate that with you. If it's just another year that you're going into, embrace it. It's a new beginning, whichever way you look at it. There you have it. That is our focus on self, those new beginnings, and now into practice matters. And practice matters, I love this section because we meet different people from different walks of life, different specialities. And Rory, you met up with Sally Ann. Sally Ann is lovely. I've worked with Sally Ann on my personal passion project on counselling skills. I love counselling skills. Sally Ann loves counselling skills. And you got together to speak about a counselling skill that I think deserves a little bit of attention, and that is focusing.
Yes, I caught up with Sally Ann, who is my team teach. I work with her on the supervision course, Counselling Tutor on a supervisor's training course, and she teaches with me. And she's a mate of mine. I think I can say that. And she talked about the skill of focusing, a really important skill, certainly in time-limited therapy. And she's done a fabulous lecture for us, which will be available in the September of 2022 when we return from the academic break, on focusing. I met up with her, asked her what it was all about, and this is what she had to say.
Practice matters.
The National Counselling Society is proud to sponsor Practice Matters. National Counselling Society are really excited to have launched their Children and Young People Therapist Register for counsellors working with the younger age group. To find out more, visit nationalcounsellingsociety.org. nationalcounsellingsociety.org.
And we welcome Sally Ann Armitage, who has done a fabulous lecture for the CSR Library on focusing. So, Sally Ann, you're very welcome.
Hello, Rory.
Yeah.
Good to see you this morning, bright and early.
It is, isn't it? We're recording this quite early in the morning UK time. So we're wiping the sleepy... I am wiping the sleepy dust from my eyes. I don't know about Sally. And the lecture you've produced is really about the work of Eugene Gendlin, isn't it? Who was if my memory serves me correctly, was a student of Roger's, worked with him at Wisconsin in what was called the Psych Project. And Eugene Gendlin produced his own take on person-centered therapy, which is called focusing. And you've done a lecture on it. So the first question is, what is focusing?
Well, that's a really good question because, how long have you got? Focusing can be quite a simple thing, or it can be quite a complex and nuanced thing. So in this lecture, I've tried to sort of give quite a lot of different examples of ways we can focus, because a simple focusing is, where do you want to start, or what feels most important to talk about first? Very simple. You sort of giving the client the opportunity to talk, to give it some thought about what they want to prioritize. But then, if you look into it a bit deeper, a reflection is a focus. Clever use of silence is a focus. So I've kind of gone into all sorts of different areas to talk about ways that you can do it. And I could have easily gone on for longer. It's such a broad subject.
Yes, and I think that's a really important point, isn't it? Because therapy has a distinct beginning, and it does start with, maybe after you've done your contract, saying to the client, what is it you want to bring? And they may have lots of scattered difficulties. And I don't know if this is your experience in your practice, Sally, but sometimes you have to ask the client which one's the most difficult. Difficulty first. So what I'm hearing is the skill of focusing is about priority. Is it about anything else though? What you said can be quite nuanced. What's the nuance?
I've given examples in my lecture about ways that you can sort of identify if a focus might be useful. And there's quite a few different ways. And some of the things I've noticed is if people don't talk about feelings or emotions at all, people talk about other people almost entirely rather than themselves. If they talk about loads of different stuff, like you said, they turn up and that's first session, it's like, and there's this, and then there's that relationship, and there's this issue. So it's about helping, especially when you get more into your practice and more comfortable being a therapist. It can be about starting to line up what's going on verbally, what's been said by your client, with what's going on inside, and making sure those two things are pretty much as close as we can get them. So, for example, if your client is saying, no, not bothered at all, actually. No, she can go ahead and do it. It's fine. Oh, no, it's fine with me. Okay, so what I'm hearing is it's fine with you, but when I listen to you, it doesn't sound that fine. That's what I'm noticing, And it's about picking up on an incongruence between deeper feelings and experiencing and what's coming out.
Yes. I mean, I think that's a really good example, and I think it is one of the most useful skills. I mean, I can remember having a client who banged his fist on his leg when he was talking, saying, "I'm not bothered about this. You know, I'm not angry at all about it." And I said to him, "You say you're not angry, but you're hitting your leg pretty hard with your fist."
Yeah. And it's about very carefully watching what's going on in front of you, and the tone and the word use. And sometimes it's about subtle emphasis, isn't it? And you notice a subtle emphasis on a word that somebody's talking about, and it's about noticing that, and that just bringing that into the client's awareness can help them tune into those deeper thoughts and feelings that otherwise they might have been missed. And that's we talk sometimes, don't we, Rory, because we teach together, we talk sometimes about the art of person-centered counselling, and that's the art form, isn't it?
I like that, Sally. And it is. I think person-centered therapy is an art form, and I don't know if you agree with me, Sally, but I often think that some people can think of its non-directive kind of base as actually not doing anything at all, but there is a sense of being involved in the relationship. Focusing for me is not directing, but observing and reflect. It's a wider reflection, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's about taking the client closer to their own frame of reference, a decent focus. Let me just tell you one of the quotes that I put in my slideshow. It's actually, again, link quote. "The most important rule for a therapist or friend to observe in helping someone to focus is to stay out of the focuser's way."
Yes.
And I love that. Because on the first view, you're like, what? What do you mean? What, do I just need to go? But when you look into it, it's right. It's right.
It is.
Because if we start saying, "Oh, it sounds from what you're telling me that you need to think about this first, and then that, and this seems like the biggest problem from what I can hear," you instantly, with good intention, we've all done it, you instantly take the client out of their frame of reference and away from their own experiencing.
Yeah. And I'll pick up on an earlier point, Sally, where we talk about incongruence. It's where thoughts, feelings, and actions are disconnected. They're in a very and they're spread out, and it's joined them in, so they're all part of the same ecosystem, and that the client can identify them. Identify what's being said with the feeling that's being expressed, and I think that's part of being a therapist. And just hearing you speak about that, within that, there's a mild challenge as well sometimes, isn't there? Just a mild little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, there definitely is. And of course, if you're new to counselling, or you're training, or you're just in the first sort of 10, 20 hours of your placement, challenge might feel like a brave move. And that's all right. These things take time. It takes time for you to realise that your gut and your intuition is quite a useful tool, to be able to do that. Because I as a therapist, I've been a therapist for a long time, and part of my work is with the police force. So I am quite challenging, and I can be. I set that relationship, and it's all about that relationship, and it, being able to say to somebody all that stuff that you usually, stays in your head. It doesn't have to with me.
Yeah.
You can say it all.
Yeah.
You're never going to see me again. It's confidential. It's other stuff. So it's all good here. I'm up for this. I invite you into this process. It's that relationship's built, and then yes, I can say what I need to say, that I'm hearing this, but I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing this, and this. I might not be right, but
this is what I observe.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that sense that focusing gives us as inviting a permission. I like that term, inviting a permission to the client to be themselves, where in circumstances other than in the therapy room, they can't be.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100% with police. Absolutely. It's totally a prerequisite of being a police officer to not be congruent, to show up at a scene that would invite stress, tears, running away and not run away and not get upset and not look stressed. it's very, 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 very virtue of the job. It's not an option. So here, especially because, I sort of couch it quite carefully. I've worked for the police for years. You don't have to protect me. I really sort of go into some, sort of spend a few minutes of the start of the work just framing it, But focusing is a huge part of that, being able to use the time effectively, because it is, we get 8 sessions, so we're using that time effectively and going there. And I don't know whether, I don't know what your experience are, people listening this of therapy, but for my own, when I'm talking in therapy, I can feel the areas that feel a bit fragile, a bit like they might make me feel upset. And according to how comfortable I feel in that moment, I might go into them or I might not, and sometimes I don't. So that relationship is so important in it, to giving us that space where, all right, I know that there's something there and I'm going to walk towards it rather than away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when I think of counselling, I sometimes think of it being like a canvas, a canvas of a picture where things, in some pictures there can be some dark areas that you can't sometimes see the detail, and sometimes it needs to be explored. And you mentioned your colleagues in the police. I think there's a lot of people who may struggle to connect thoughts, feelings, and actions because of the modern world we live in, the corporate world, where emotions sometimes aren't invited. Other emergency services, there's a huge span. But I did take your point that the police are at our police force and our colleagues in the police are at the real sharp end of situations. It's a useful skill focusing. Are there any things that we need to be thoughtful of? Any rookie errors that we need to make sure that we don't? Any potholes we need to make sure we don't kind of fall into?
The one that I observe most in supervisees and when I used to teach counselling, the one that was the main issue is people using their own frame of reference. And it, I from what I hear, you need to be speaking about the bereavement, don't you? That's what, is that what you're here for? It sounds like, even their reflections can focus in on something that's of their choosing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Inadvertently.
Yeah.
Because they've sat and they've thought, I can hear this client and this is what they should be doing.
Absolutely. And it also speaks to transference as well, doesn't it? If you're seeing a client and it's bringing up thoughts and feelings from the past, it's very, very easy, I think, to direct the arc of therapy as opposed to letting them direct the arc of therapy, the clients.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I do talk to my trainees especially about is when we're with a client, the natural pattern should be, in my opinion, should be that our intervention, what we say, should go back into what the client says. So client speaks, we go back into, client speaks, we go back into, and that should be the trend. Whereas what I notice with trainees is they lead to new.
Yeah.
Oh, have you thought about speaking to that person? Have you done anything that you can? Have you thought of anything where you can help reduce your stress? Onward.
Yeah.
Whereas we should be going backwards into and using the client's words and the client's emotions to frame our own intervention, frame what we actually say.
Yeah.
And that's what I notice quite a lot of as well.
And I think that's interesting, isn't it? Because, it may be that that's a form of directivity that sometimes therapists don't recognise they're doing. By saying, maybe if you focused on the bereavement, maybe if you took time to look after your health or told that person. These are all external frames of reference and they're generated by the therapist, aren't they? Yeah. They're not what's going on for the client.
Yeah, and they lead the client out.
Yeah.
Not in.
Yeah. I totally agree. Are there any times, Sally, where focusing can be quite hard work for the therapist?
Yeah. And I'll tell you one that comes to mind straight away. You've kind of alluded to it already. If if you've suffered something in your own life, some sort of trauma or bereavement, and maybe it's a little bit unsettled, even if it was miles of, years in the past, it doesn't matter. If it's unsettled, it's unsettled. And you know that the client is kind of bringing a bit of that, you may focus away.
Yeah.
Avoid.
Yeah.
And you may, and it's kind of like, I suppose you could also call it rescuing, couldn't you?
Yeah, you can. I think there's a good reason why we have the word rescuing, and sometimes people think that it's rescuing the client, but actually it can be rescuing the therapist as well, can't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And we're not sort of sat here, are we, Rory, saying we know exactly how to do this. We never make mistakes. We're perfect therapists. It's not a thing, is it? Perfection is not. It's not an option in this profession. Even after all these, crikey, how many hours I've done, I still walk away sometimes and think that were a bit pants.
Yeah, I've had days like that where I've thought client's gone and I've sat down and thought that was rubbish.
Yeah, yeah. And then other days, I'm like,
hey, and one of the interesting things I think about through the arc of my practice is the times when there's the wowest moments is where the client's doing most of the work.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something if we find that we're working very hard, I don't say too hard, when we're working very hard, then there's something might be happening, mightn't it?
Yeah.
If we're feeling like we are exhausted and we've been doing a lot of the thinking and the figuring out, I think that can mean that we need to, well, for me personally, it means that I need to shut up. Boop.
Yeah, so
and let the client take the lead.
I think it was Marcus Aurelius who said we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. Yeah. And I think that's a very good axiom for our work as counsellors. As we come to the end of this interview, Sally, what takeaways would you hope that people would take from watching your lecture? What changes in practice would you hope that people may think about instigating as a result of watching your lecture?
This is going to sound strange. Don't be clever. Don't try to be clever. Don't try to use all the skills in such a finessed way. Don't try to solve. Don't try to analyse and get somebody quickly. Just listen right from the top of your head right down to your toes. Join a person and listen. And if you're really listening and you're really trying to genuinely get a person from their frame of reference, then the rest will sort itself out.
Well, I think on those very wise words, Sally, we'll end the reference. We'll end the reference. We'll end the interview. I know, frames of reference. We'll end the interview. Sally-Ann Armitage, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rory.
Big thank you to Sally-Ann Armitage, and of course to you, Rory, for having the reaching out and having the interview. I'm trying to say holding or hosting the interview. Oh, the words today. But there you have it. Oh, yes, of course. I need to mention now Sally-Ann's lecture. You did mention before the interview, Rory, but that will go live in the Counselling Study resource, and that will be in September of 22. So if you're a member, September 22, you can log in and have a look at that. If you're not a member of the Counselling Study resource, so you are going to be studying next year, you can get a head start on the rest of your group. You can have a look at what you're going to be covering in your year. We've got the most of the schemes of work mapped out in there, and you can get more information on that by going to counsellingtutor.com. This has been episode 233 of the Counselling Tutor Podcast.
Yes, we started off with phenomenology, the philosophy of perception, and the basis of virtually all therapeutic ideas. We moved on to focus on self, a bit of a celebration of new beginnings and going out into the world and moving into your life and embracing it. And I guess, having a phenomenological experience. And finally, we caught up with Sally-Ann Armitage, passionate about counselling skills, who talked about the skill of focusing. And as always, stay grounded and stay safe.
If you're a qualified counsellor or psychotherapist, then why not check out the Counsellor CPD Library? Stay current with your CPD requirements with over 150 hours of academically rigorous, on-demand lectures you can stream to your device. Joining Counsellor CPD will expand your skill set to create a more specialised, highly rewarding practice. For more information on the Counselor CPD library, visit counsellingtutor.com.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.